time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this bodacious episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. I am your hostess, Jeanette Anderson, and today I'm here with fellow Canadian Cathy Derksen, who's dialing in from just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. For those of my American friends, if you hit Seattle and keep going north, you'd kind of get there. So I am pleased to have you here today, Cathy, because we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is midlife reignition or reigniting yourself during midlife. And I know we're both passionate about that. So we're going to have a lot of fun telling people to pitter patter, let's get at her. Okay, so welcome. And as you know, folks, I'll tell you the official word. Then we're going to find out all the juicy, salacious, deep, dark, hidden secrets behind the scenes. Maybe not. And we'll dive into our topic, which is really about midlife is not the time to slow down. It is the time to reignite your passion and step into new possibilities. So we're going to talk about that, how you do that exactly, why you want to do that, what that means, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So welcome, Cathy. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So Cathy Derksen is the passionate founder of Inspired Tenacity. Love that name. An international speaker, publisher, and 19 times #1 bestselling author. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. After reimagining her own life in her 50s, Cathy discovered her mission to help midlife women embrace new possibilities and boldly share their stories. She believes authorship and community are the keys to true impact for the storyteller and the lives they touch. Through her multi-author book projects, retreats, and vibrant community, Cathy has helped over 200 women become published authors, amplifying their visibility, expanding their businesses, and publishing lasting legacies. Her programs are more than platforms. They're launching pads for purpose-driven transformation. Love that line too. And I know we talked before, and so you're mostly focused on women, but you do have a few good men that you work with.
That's right.
Okay, so guys, this is going to be good information for you as well. So don't tune out just because we said women. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the real you behind the scenes. So I know that that's all true and part of who you are, but let's talk about something that people wouldn't guess about you if they read your website or met you for the first time. Maybe something even your best friend doesn't know about you. What's something people would be surprised by, Cathy?
Well, something people would be surprised by now. Many people don't know that my original career, I worked in medical genetics.
Oh, okay.
For 25 years. And I like to say I've been a biologist since the age of 3. So ever since I was old enough to decide what I wanted to do and what I was curious about, it was all about living things and the magic of life. So that is something a lot of people these days don't know.
Okay, interesting. And how do you remember being a biologist at the age of 3? Was it that you were like watching worms? And what was that early passion? What did it look like?
Well, the stories I hear, I would come home with pockets full of worms. And I would always be out in the fields and things collecting. I had snakes and bugs and butterflies, and I would capture caterpillars and keep them till they turned into the moth or the butterfly they were meant to be. I would go out to ponds and collect frog eggs. And bring those home until they turned into tadpoles. And every now and then they would make it all the way to frogs, but they usually ended somewhere in the string-shaped tadpole with little legs and funny things. And so always curious about living things. And my room became a zoo of things. So I would have all kinds of jars and terrariums and things all over the place. With spiders were about the only thing I didn't ever have a fancy for. I
Okay.
had
Well,
snakes, I had lizards, I had all sorts of other bugs and things and creepy
I bet your
crawlies, but
mom
not spiders.
just loved grabbing your clothes for the laundry. I bet she loved checking your pockets to see whether or not there's something in there. So that led you into biology and research and medical biology, and that's quite a big switch from what you're doing now. So take us on that journey. How did you make this transformation and this leap?
Yeah, and even if you'd asked me even 5 years ago, if I saw myself becoming a published author, getting into publishing, I probably would have laughed at you, because there was nothing on my previous lives that indicated that this was the route I was going. So it was really around 2010 when I was going through a lot of big stuff in life, going through a divorce and just kind of hitting that questioning, what am I here for? What's my passion? What am I supposed to be doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, all I really knew for sure is that I knew I was supposed to be doing something focused on women, and not just in a little way, but really on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really all I knew. And so the next thing I did, I went into financial planning, because I thought, well, this is how I can, create a true impact in the lives of women. And did that for about 10 years, had my CFP, all the bells and whistles, and still realized that was not the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was still working at the bank, I started getting involved in books. So I had written my first chapter in anthology. And at that time, really the only reason I had even considered it, like I said, I didn't consider myself a writer. It was not on my bucket list to become a published author. But a group of my friends had been doing these books. And again, the first books, I knew they were doing them, but it didn't occur to me as something I should do. And then they had one come up, and it was called Emotional Intelligence, Mental Health Matters. And that's when I had just come through that chaos of, the divorce, a complete career change. I had 2 teenagers with me at the time, and I just felt like my story could help somebody else coming through similar things.
Okay.
And so I got into my first book, and the next thing I knew, as you mentioned, I'm at 19 anthologies now that I've participated in, with the 20th one coming out in August. The 21st will be sometime around early September, and I love it and have discovered this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
All right. Well, I can see where, a job change and divorce, but really 2 teenagers at home, that would impact mental health. That would.
Well, exactly. And especially through those big life changes, because I'm not just taking myself through them. I'm dealing with their own challenges and normal teenage stuff on top of all of that.
Oh my God. Okay. So you wrote your first chapter in a book. And so these books that we're talking about, if people are not clear, are what we call anthology. They're sometimes called compendium books or compilation books, or are there any other names for them?
Compilation books, collaboration books. I often call them multi-author books.
Multi-author books,
to make it clear, because yes, a lot of people don't know the word anthology or compilation book. So I often use multi-author book. And
So that's probably the clearest. So basically, in most cases in these books, they are you write a chapter, and you and anywhere from 10 to 30 or 40 or 100 other authors write a chapter and a segment in this book, typically around a theme, and then that gets published, and everybody publicizes it, and they often get to, when you have the right publisher, can get to a bestseller status on Amazon. So we'll come back to more about that and details about that. But what did it take for you to make the leap from financial planner to doing the authorship and the becoming a publisher? Because that's another shift. And it's one thing to become aware that I like doing this. It's another thing to go all in and make it a business. So what did that take for you to do that?
I definitely will not say it was an easy road, and definitely was not one for the faint of heart. And as you know, that the title of my company is Inspired Tenacity. And part of that came along as I discovered that those are a couple of the key components of making any massive change in your life. You need the inspiration and the tenacity. And I always say the word that belongs in the middle is courage.
Mm.
And yeah, so like I said, I made that switch from medical genetics to finance with that idea that this is how I'm going to help create true impact in the lives of women. And, really realize that just, mainly based on the rules and regulations of that industry and this, I wasn't able to provide what I felt needed to be there to help people come through those big shifts in life. And so I started making that decision that I needed to figure it out on my own. Like, what is it that I'm here to do? And part of that, I would definitely say part of that push was around my job at the time. We just come through COVID. There was all the chaos of dealing with, working at home and as a financial planner, luckily we were set up well to work anywhere from the systems we had on our computers, but definitely feeling from kind of the, top down management style that we really were being just treated like we were just peons and just work more, do more. And with all the stress of everything else, I just got to the point, it's like, no, I'm not doing this. Life is too short. I'm just going to figure this out on my own.
Okay.
And so that was probably the push to just make that leap and just say, okay, I'm going self-employed.
So it sounds like a perfect storm of that often is the case for a lot of people of inspiration, some kind of inspiration that's pulling you, but if it wasn't for the BS or the intolerance or the crap that's going on over here that pushes us, we probably wouldn't make that leap, or we wouldn't make it perhaps as quickly or as decisively, or even tentatively. So it often requires that perfect storm of situations of, True. And the third component that you mentioned is what I'm going to call wisdom. As we get older, we have less tolerance for BS. We recognize we have finite time on this planet, and even though that's extending, and we, that sense of meaning matters, and I matter, and I'm not going to, waste my life on things that aren't important to me. So you mentioned courage, and courage is not the absence of fear; it's the presence of fear and doing it anyways. How did you, because there's lots of different ways to create courage, to take action. How did you do that? What's your recipe for you personally to create courage if you need to do something? What do you do?
That is a very good question. I think part of it, if we look at the word confidence, to me, what confidence means is just having trust in yourself that you'll figure it out. So not knowing you can do it, not knowing, okay, I've got it all down. It's just that trust, I'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what also feeds into courage on my side, is that there's been so many times in my life when I've just had to figure it out. And so having that faith in myself and that trust that I can adapt, I can recreate, when I was a kid, we moved quite a lot. And so, every time you move, you're recreating who you are. You're figuring out what fits in here. Where am I? What am I doing? Where's the school? So I think all of those parts of my life kind of fed into my ability to just be courageous and just go forward and just do what has to get done. And so I would say that was a big part of it. And it was definitely part of it too, that it was like literally like a calling. Like when I did figure out what it was that I really was meant to do, that there was an inner energy about it that, keep moving in that direction because that's where you're supposed to go. And I almost can't really even describe it in a lot of words because it really was just an inner knowing that there is, you're going in a direction. You don't know where you're going yet. But trust me, there's something there.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about that, but I want to come back to, so what I heard you say in terms of your process for my American friends around creating courage, that you really reflected on and owned and recognized that you have a core competence, and core competence gives us confidence. And I think if you're listening to this and you're at all older, you probably have, if you reflect, some level of trust in your core competence, that ability to adapt, to figure things out. And you also looked back and saw that you have a history of resourcefulness. You saw that you have figured stuff out as you went along. And so you knew that if it's been the case so far all this time, then chances are good it's going to be the case in the future. So really looking at what is versus focusing on, oh my God, all the fears and the doubts and the what doesn't exist. So you looked at for history, for proof of, yep, I got this, I can do this. And then you combine that with what you're calling a calling, and that pull that pulled you forward, that purpose-led pull. So I think that's a great method. That's something that I use sometimes. For some people, we got to put our back against the wall, or as Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, put your backs to the ocean and burn your boats, so you don't have any choice but to win, kind of thing. It's a little dramatic, but I
think it's true. I use that reference very often.
Yeah, there
burn
you
the
go.
boats. You just got to burn the boats.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are times too where really what we need is to call in a lot of support, to call in people who will hold our hand as we make that leap. Or kick our butt out of the nest, one of the two. So for you, though, it was really about getting grounded in who you really are, and I got this, I can do this. And then you made the leap. Part of what you said was it was a calling. Now, for many people, they have a notion, perhaps, of what they want to do or what they're meant to do, but many don't know what their why is. So let's first talk about your why, and then let's talk about this calling. So what would you say your purpose in life is?
Yeah, and I would say it's really kind of come to me intuitively as I've been on this journey, and it really was around creating a true impact in the lives of women around the world. Mm-hmm. And kind of also kind of looking, how am I doing that? What's the next step? And like I said, at the beginning, I just had this knowing, and I had no idea what that was going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so can we play with this for a little minute?
Sure.
Is a teaching example? Okay, so my definition of your why is the intersection between what you're healing from the past and what you long for the future, for yourself and others. And often people talk about what they do, like make an impact on women, as their purpose. But why does that's what you do. Why does that matter to you so much, Cathy? Why does supporting women, and in what way do you want to impact women? What's the important part of what you want to impact them with?
Yes. And that's just it. I really didn't know how or what that would look like. But I think a lot of it comes from, when I did get to that point that I knew I had to leave my marriage. And my marriage was toxic and abusive. My workplace at the time had also become very toxic. And I just came to a point when I know I needed to make massive changes in my life. And at that time, I really felt I didn't have a lot of support. I didn't have a lot of like someone to really talk to about it, or someone that could really support at all. Mm-hmm. And so I literally went through that whole big thing just on my own, just on survival instincts. And I think that's where it came from. And seeing a lot of my friends around me also going through similar divorces and career changes and just a lot of uncertainty and kind of aloneness in that journey they were on. And I think that's where it came from. It was just a feeling of, I can help. That my role is to be helping these women who are challenged or struggling or just needing that hand.
When you were moving a lot as a child, were you an only child or did you have siblings?
No, there's 3 of us.
Oh, okay. Because we can have a competition about who moves the most, but I moved 27 times in the first 29 years of my life, and most of that when I was in school.
I did a lot of moving in that period of my life too.
Yeah. And for me, that was also a very lonely time. And because I didn't have siblings. And one of the things you mentioned is that it can be a very lonely time when women are going through divorce, or when they're going through major transitions, or when they're in the workplace and they're not seen, heard, valued in the way that they could be. So when you were a little kid, were you often quite lonely as a result of doing a lot of the travel and moving and all of that?
I would say so, because every time you start at another school, and quite often it would be like every year or every year and a half, or if we were lucky, it was 2 years. The longest time I lived anywhere was 4 years, and that was in high school. Mm-hmm. And so every time you're starting over, and yes, I had my siblings, and mm-hmm. Obviously, that's better than being completely alone in it. But still, you've got to walk into that classroom by yourself. You've got to go to that school and figure it out. You've got to find your own friends every time. You've got to find your own, and even things like sports. Mm-hmm. You don't get very involved in sports when you're probably not going to be there for the next season and that kind of thing. So yeah, no, I would definitely say there was a lot of loneliness, and just part of it was that figure it out. So I'm very adaptable now.
Yeah, exactly. I know that's one of the bonuses that I got out of my chaotic and violent and difficult childhood is I'm super resourceful. Do you remember Radar on MASH?
Yes.
I'm old enough to remember that. Yeah, that's me. You need something, I can get it. I can find it. I can source it no matter what. So what I'm hearing, Cathy, is that really your purpose in life is to bring together those who are lonely and struggling and going through difficult times on their own, and give them connections and the voice that they need to get through to the other side of that.
I'd say that's a big part of it. Yes, I'm just going to now narrow down on midlife women and the journey that we're on to figure out what we're going to do with the rest of our life.
Exactly. Well, and we'll talk about that midlife side of things too. But let's go back to the calling for a moment, because I had a similar experience. Although I think we talked about this, I was far more stubborn than you were in the accepting of the calling. And so for some people, they think, okay, it's not really my purpose or my calling if I don't hear, a choir of angels, or what's my purpose unless I get some kind of direct message from the universe, then it's not the real thing. What's your experience been of that for both you and your clients? How do people know when they're being called? How did you know? Versus just a notion of, well, I could do this. What was the difference for you?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it really was a knowing. And I think, the idea of just having a knowing is something that I've learned is one of my superpowers, or kind of innate skills that isn't necessarily common among all people. But there's been times when things have happened and I've known something and then heard about it later, that how did I already know that? So the knowing is definitely something I've become familiar with, and kind of learning how to listen to my intuition. And I think that's a big part of it, that I would say in our culture, we're trained not to listen to our intuition.
Right.
And so when we do get an intuitive message, we tend to disregard it, and we tend to blow it off as just, some silly ideas, a whim. And I've definitely gotten very good at listening to my intuition over the last decade and a half. And so I think that's a lot where that came from too, that I got that knowing. And then I also had that trust in my intuition. Yeah. Think, okay, this is a real message, and it wouldn't go away. Yeah. So, even like I said, I went into financial planning first thinking that was the right answer. And 10 years later, that message is still coming. This isn't the right answer. You're not in the right place. Yeah. The core focus was still the same, but that message was still there, that nope, this isn't it. Keep moving. This isn't it. And even when I first left my job and started my business, I was, assuming I would do more of a coaching kind of thing, like money coach, life coach, given my background. Yeah. And again, that message kept saying, nope, this isn't the right answer. This isn't the right answer. Keep looking, keep looking.
Yes, I hear you. You can hear me okay, right? they're putting up siding at the house next door, and there's this squeaky thing that goes up and down. So I wasn't sure if you were hearing it, but I thought I would switch to headphones. So yeah, my version of that was I was doing a meditation, which I seldom do. I kind of have this agreement with God. If I pause long enough to listen, tell me fast, because you've only got a small window. If you tell me, I'll listen and I'll pay attention, I'll do it. But you've got a small window. So usually I get stuff really quickly. God knows I'm like an ADHD kind of child and needs to be talked to very fast. So I got the download while I was doing a meditation once. I wrote out 11 pages in my journal about this big thing called Bodacity, about inspiring, shifting the world from fear to love, one happy and empowered woman at a time. All of the business model, all of the everything. And it was a mindset, a community, a movement, all of this stuff just poured onto the pages. And I literally read it, Cathy, and I closed the book and I said, I don't know, God, I think you got the wrong person. I'm pretty sure you meant to call Gloria Steinem, because I'm not even really a feminist. So I think you got the wrong person. Go away. And then I spent about, I kind of moved in that direction because, I somewhat do what I'm told sometimes. And then but really I was very resistant, and I'd get the call, in some kind of message or something, and I'd go, but I don't even really like women, go away. And I'd hang up, and I'd get the call and I'd be like, there's so many women's groups. Back when there was 4, now there's 4 million, right? And this went on for quite a while before I finally surrendered to this calling and went all in. And as soon as I went all in, then of course I understood why women, why now, and why me. As long as I was being resistant, rebellious, nothing really clarified or moved or got going. And a lot of that was about that women will shift how we do business, which will shift how our society does everything. And that the more women have the opportunity to truly be partnering with men, because we haven't really, that'll be better for them and better for us. And, this nonsense of still being only paid 80 cents on the dollar, that shit needs to stop, like right now. That's enough of that nonsense. So anyways, there was a variety of different reasons why it was what it was. And then recently I had another instant where something happened to me that an experience of ageism where I was just dismissed, and I went, oh, no. And that shifted my focus. So sometimes the calling can be an internal knowing. Sometimes it can be a message. Sometimes it can be something that happens, or a book we read that goes whack and hits us in the face. There can be a lot of ways for you to hear your calling, folks. The thing is not to ignore it and not to be rebellious and resistant like me, and to just say yes and to see what happens. And if it's, it'll of course correct if it's not the right direction. So, because we can live into our purpose in any different way. You were helping women be seen and heard and valued as a financial planner, but it wasn't the full expression that you wanted to be, and you were living your purpose in that expression, but not in the way that you are now. So tell me a little bit about your publishing business and why you think it's so important for women to tell their story. So all that to say, all of my rambling to say, if you're not sure if you're getting a calling, chances are good you probably are. Trust it, follow it, be willing to say yes, because the biggest issue is permission, and then see where it takes you. And even if you're not sure, just go for it, because then you can see what happens. And by the way, the callings don't have to be big and grandiose. Ours was to support people on a big scale. Sometimes my clients' callings are be the best grandma ever, or, that kind of thing. So it is what it is for you. So, but the key is to say yes, to have the courage to say yes. All right. So Cathy, tell me why you're so passionate about having women's voices be heard through books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then a part of it is like you were saying as well, this whole idea that, having women step into a position of more visibility and having our voices heard, I do believe will change the world. Mm. And I think that's part of, also my passion around this is that I really do believe that midlife women stepping into what we are passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
and even if it has nothing to do with what we spent the rest of our life doing, following our passion now and what we're feeling we're here to do, I really do believe will shift the world. And so that idea that our stories create a bonding experience, and I think so many of us, we learn from each other's stories. We find motivation, inspiration, courage, strength from the stories of others. Mm. So whether they're coming through the exact same experience, or if they're coming through just a similar one, or just a big hurdle in general, I feel like the more we really take on everybody else's stories, the more we find our own strength to take on these changes. And so that's a big part of what it is that, lifting each other as a community through story. But the other side of it too is, quite often I find that women tend to minimize the value of their own experience and what they've come through. And when they're able to put that in writing and release it out into the world, and then get feedback from other people around, wow, you really inspired me, or, oh, I went through that too, or, oh, can you help me? It completely shifts how they feel about their own experience. And the other part of it too is around possibility. To me, that's a piece that's missing in a lot of our life, whether it's men or women, I would say, in midlife, that we have a very limited view on what we're supposed to do next, or what we're allowed to do next. And so I think, all these ways where we can show each other the possibilities of what's in front of us, whether it's an exact example, or whether it's just that knowing that, wow, she did something completely different that she's ever done before. Maybe I can do something completely different than I've ever done before.
Right.
And even getting published, I think they say like 92% of people have it on their bucket list to become a published author. Wow. But most people, it goes on the back burner and never happens. I think they say like 5% of people ever do.
Wow.
And so I find too, when someone does release their chapter, we're in the book, we launch it out in the world, they've got their book in their hand, that also then shifts that feeling of what's possible. Wow, I didn't think I could do that. Now I've done that. What else can I do?
Yeah, absolutely. When we do those things when we do hard things, as Linus, whatever says from Untamed, I can't remember her last name right now. Doyle. It expands, Doyle, thank you. It expands our context, our sense of who we are. And, well, like you said, what's possible. So it's kind of like walking on fire. It's like, oh, if I can do that, I can do anything.
Yeah.
So hopefully the writing the book experience is not quite as
no, it's not painful
hot as walking on fire. Actually, walking on fire wasn't painful. It was interesting. But it was, because I've done a lot of those kinds of things because they're just fun to do. So tell me a little bit about, how do people find what their story is that's meaningful to them, that they want to put out there? Because one of the things that's blocked me for a long time is people keep saying, oh, you got to tell your story. You got to write a book. You've had such an interesting life. And I always kind of say, well, it's interesting to me because I've lived it, but I'm not famous and I'm not, and so why would anybody else really care? Stories are how society has passed on wisdom and knowledge for centuries since man was around. And we've gotten away from that. But I've always kind of thought, well, it's interesting to me, but it probably wouldn't be interesting to others. So what would you say to women who are thinking that right now? Or men?
And that's one of the things I love about the multi-author books, because you're only writing one chapter. So you don't have to put a whole book together and then I did this and then I did that. And, it's like, and every book has a different theme. So you're reflecting on your own life based on that theme, pulling out, what are the parts of my life that I have a story that wraps around that. Like some of my previous books have been Embrace Courage, Midlife Awakening. So like in those ones, you would look at your own journey and think, okay, what part of my story is around courage? When I've taken on courage with an example that might help others as they're taking, embracing courage. And so I think that's a big part of it. And I often get a lot of women who do say, yes, I don't think my story is interesting enough. Like you say, I'm not famous. I haven't, invented anything really important, but I think it's the everyday examples. And again, going back to my Embrace Courage book, that was part of that theme I went with, was that courage is not just about rushing into the fire to save the children. It's about everyday things that we go through and take on. And so really allowing people to see that we've all got examples of courage. We've all got examples of when we've had to, really take something on like that. And then, so I agree that if you're looking at writing a whole book by yourself, that possibly it would be hard to find enough content in your own life just to put it all together, unless you're really focusing in on one part of it. But yeah, definitely jumping into an anthology and focusing down on a piece of your life and putting it out there. And that's partly why I keep doing more and more. And like you mentioned, that, I've got 19 done right now, and most of those were other people's books that I'm just one of the authors in. And I still continue to do that. So if someone comes to me and they're working on a book that's in alignment with what I'm doing, then I'll jump into somebody else's book too, because every time is an opportunity to reflect and share my story from a different perspective.
Right. Well, and let's talk about so it's a great way to share our story. It can be cathartic. It can be helpful. It can be instructional for people in our family. One of the things that shifted, I just want to mention this before we go on, is for me around writing a biography type book, was one day someone said the words instructional biography. As soon as I heard that, I went, oh, now that I can do. I can use stories to be illustrative and instructional around different things, like you said, creating courage or, whatever it might be, business concepts and so forth. And that would make sense to me. That I could see doing, and that kind of gets my stuff out of the way. So that's what I'm more focused on. That made a big shift for me. Let's talk a little bit about the business side of being in an anthology or multi-author book. What does it do for people if you're, let's say, in some kind of service business where you're selling your expertise or your knowledge or yourself in some way? How do books help?
Yeah, I would say these days it's pretty much become expected that entrepreneurs are authors. And as someone, a potential client, is going through lists of people that might do similar jobs or services, things like that do stand out. That if you've got author in your profile, people do generally put you into a higher category of accomplishment, credibility, authority, those things, and visibility in your business are a few of the big ones. And especially for those of us who are looking to add speaking as part of what we do. If you're looking at getting into conferences or summits or even being on podcasts, most of the people that organize those kind of things look for authors first. And then they'll fill in with people that aren't authors yet. So those are a few of the things. But to me, especially with the multi-author book, the visibility that is created by the community of people that are in the book, all amplifying each other. Like the books that I do, I focus on having 20 people, roughly 20 people per book. So you think about it now, you've got 20 communities, not just 20 people, 20 communities around the world are now promoting the same thing that you're part of. So it's almost like riding a wave. And then, of course, you take advantage of that momentum you're building by also incorporating, your other posts and your other things that you're doing into that activity. And it becomes a massive way of building visibility for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what you're specifically talking about there is the other authors will send out emails to their communities or their mail list, or they'll do a book launch and in their hometown or something like that. And because you're also in the book, then you're getting in front of those people, assuming they read all the book and the whole story and your story and so forth. So it's a way to get in front of audiences that you might not otherwise. And you don't have to be the only one. And that's part of what drives it to bestseller, is that you've got multiple people
Yes.
driving traffic to the site on a particular day. So you've talked a little bit about the book. Is there anything that you would like to say in terms of how people can figure out what the story is that will benefit their business? Like, how do they make that decision?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why I always have several different book projects on the go at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So when people come to me and they're like, "I want to be in a book, which would be a good fit for me?"
Mm-hmm.
And so we really look at what is their business, what is their story, and which book would that both fit in best and would also be hitting their target market.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the other part of it, right? You want the book to be focused on the people that you want to be attracting into your business.
Mm-hmm.
So with a lot of my authors are, say, coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll be sharing both, what their journey has been in life. Most of us, what we're doing in our business now is what our passion is, which has come from what we were doing previously in our life, that evolution of our passion and our expertise. So for example, if we use a coach as an example, and she's come through, say she was an alcoholic and she came through that and she overcame that, and now she's helping other people overcome, whether it's addictions or whatever. So she's able to share her journey, what she's learned along the way, and then lean into those examples that overlap with what she's doing in her business. So we get to the point where the reader comes along and they're now learning a bit about that person, what she's been through. There's a bond, there's a connection there in their story. And then here's these tips, like a taste of what her work is. And then right beside it in her bio page is a direct link to her. Mm-hmm. So whether it's her website, an email, social media, it's a direct link to her in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes it an expensive business card, but an effective business card. By the way, because it does drive traffic to your site, your events, etc., to you. So let's go back just a bit and define midlife, because that's a lot of who you're focused on. So what's your definition of midlife?
I define midlife as really anywhere, generally I'd say from like 45 to 80. To me, it's that time in life when we come to that realization that what we're doing at the moment is not what we feel is the right place for us. And we start going through that evolution and that shift and that change in a different direction. I've met people in their 30s who have already had that revelation and have set themselves on a new route. I think this person in one of my books right now is 83. And she is constantly learning and changing and evolving. And think, wow, I want to be like that when I'm 83.
Yeah.
So to me, it's everywhere in the middle of that. It's whatever age you're in, and when you just realize, okay, life is too short to keep stuck in what is really killing me. In a lot of cases, some of these toxic work environments and family situations, it's literally killing us.
Yeah, for sure. And the last, I don't have a lot of rules in life because I can't remember a lot of rules. So I have two. Don't do anything you're going to regret, and don't regret anything you've done. Meaning, don't be a psychopath, but learn from it and grow from it, and then move on, kind of thing. And I think regret is one of the biggest challenges people have as we get older. Is more often the fear of dying with regrets is almost always not regretting what we've done, but regretting what we haven't done.
Yes.
So this is that time to figure out what that is. And often it's easier with help, because our purpose, our passion is right there on the end of our nose and we can't see it. So we need someone like Cathy, like myself, to help you pull it back so you can get a look at it and see what is it that really drives you or pulls you or inspires you or calls you, right? What is it, that thing? And then, working with someone, again, a business coach or someone like Cathy, to say, okay, well, great. How do I turn that into something tangible? A business, a book, a workshop, something that a side hustle, whatever that may be. So it's a multi-step process, but not an easy one to do on our own. We need support. And, there's lots of stats about the fact that if we don't have meaning in our life, we live 7 years less and qualitatively worse years. Like we aren't as healthy, we aren't as happy, etc. And if we do have meaning and purpose and we have something that gets us out of bed in the morning, typically we live 8 years better and longer and so forth. So it is a really important component to look at. So again, get someone like Cathy, have a conversation with her to find out what are some of the topics that she's, exploring right now, but also what are some of the things that might be calling you or that you want to pass on or that are important to you. There's, I think it's MIT. They do something called the last lecture, and they ask their professors to give a lecture as if it was their last lecture in life.
Wow.
And it's very meaningful and poignant. Where I came across that was there was a professor named Randy Pausch, who it literally was his last lecture. He had 6 months to live and he had little kids and stuff. And so he was giving this lecture. It's a beautiful thing to go and watch. You can get it on YouTube. He's got a book called The Last Lecture. And I don't think it was a TED Talk. I think it's just on YouTube. But what would your last lecture be? If you're listening to this, what would be the message you would want to leave people with? And then talk to Cathy about how do I turn that into a chapter in a book. And then you've got that legacy piece there with, by the way, it's not as hard as you might think it is. And you've got that to start, perhaps kickstart that passion, kickstart that inquiry, kickstart that curiosity again about what might be possible. So Cathy, tell them a little bit more about how to get in touch with you, how to find you, and you've got a gift for everybody.
Yeah, so as far as social media goes, LinkedIn is really the only place you'll find me. I'm kind of in other places, but not active. So definitely find me on LinkedIn. My website is inspiredtenacity.com. And so there you'll find all the information about my past books, current books, and all the details like that. Mm-hmm. And the gift that I've got is free downloads of several of my books, as well as an opportunity to get together on a one-on-one and have a chat about what are your goals of sharing your journey, what's your next chapter, and let's just see what we can draw out of you.
Awesome. So please take her up on that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, normally we put these in the past and other shows, they put them in the show notes, but we've created something that's a win-win-win, we think, for our guests, for you, our listeners, and for us. And that is that we have what's called the Vault. So the Vault is a place that you go and opt into. It'll be in the show notes and in the listed below on this episode. And you register to be in the Vault, and you can go and see and download not only Cathy's gifts, so you'll register for her gifts and go and get her books and book a time with her. And I highly recommend that you do. Because if you're listening to this, by the way, that's not an accident. It's probably part of this calling that we've been talking about. So book a call with her. And then you can also see the other speakers and all of their gifts. And if some of those appeal to you or might feel appropriate for you, go ahead and opt into those as well. That way, our authors or our speakers get visibility 24/7, year-round. You get to avail yourself of all sorts of different goodies all at once. And we get you on our list, which is a big part of why we created the Vault as well. So we would like to create a win-win-win like that. So please opt into the Vault. And yes, if you download multiple gifts, you will receive, thank you emails in an email sequence if they're smart from every one of those people. However, you can use them as instructional and learn how to write a good email sequence and see which ones appeal to you and which ones don't, or you can simply unsubscribe. So I recommend that you go and get Cathy's gift right away. Get on her calendar, go and read some of those books to get the inspiration and the idea of what those chapters might look like so that you can take your story and turn it into something that's meaningful and helpful, not just for you, but for other people as well. So go grab that. All right. Thank you, Cathy, for that gift and for being here. And part of what we were talking about is midlife, reinvention. and that it's not a time to slow down. It's a time to figure out what your passion is, perhaps your purpose, what you want to be, do, and have now, and then put the gas on. Talk a little bit about why you're so passionate about that. Why is that so important? Leave people with a sense of how they can do that.
Yeah, and I always like to share one of my favorite quotes is don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
Yeah.
And to me, that sums up everything that I do. Because it's all about helping people find their passion, step into possibilities, recognize the opportunities around them. And I mean, for myself as well, it's a big part of what makes me come alive is, helping other people step into those opportunities. And like you were saying too, we have to plan to live a good long life and to have that spark, that flame that gets us feeling like this is why I got out of bed this morning. This is what I would love to do. This is what makes me come alive. I think focusing on that and finding that will change your life completely.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And on that note, folks, please do subscribe and share this episode because there may be someone who needs to hear exactly what Cathy just said. But it's time to come alive, to reignite that spark. And we are not done yet, my friends. In fact, we are #not done by a long shot. Thank you for being here, everybody. And thank you for being here, Cathy. And thank you for your passion and your commitment to supporting others in coming alive. I love that.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day, everybody. And go book with Cathy. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.